All right, are there any questions about the formatting of the debate?
Sorry, I don't have a question. I saw you guys do this a couple of times, but then there were a couple of times when I didn't see it. Can you just make sure the placard is raised when there's only 10 seconds left? And then for the duration of the 10 seconds. Thank you.
All right, the first question is for Anjali. You have discussed improving mental health resources on campus. The cost of counseling services are typically shared approximately 50-50 by students and the university through the student services fee. All of the mental health initiatives your platform contains will likely come at an added cost. If the university is not able to contribute 50% of the costs of your initiatives, would you rather students pay the entire cost through an increased fee or abandon the initiatives altogether? The order will be Maz, Salim, and then Anjali.
Thanks for the question, Devin. As you see from our platform, mental health is a big priority for Team Spark. And working with the SSO with counseling services, advocating for online support is a major part of our presidential platform. Where my platform comes in and where we differ is that we think that mental health, we need to take a more holistic approach, focus on issues like sleep, relationships, and food habits, and work with the existing services that Feds offers to address those issues.
Mental health is one of it's okay. Mental health is one of the most prioritized thing we have. We are considering de-stressing room and regular puppy room. So we are absolutely fine with it. Thank you.
So we have a few platform points for mental health, but relating to counselors specifically, we understand that the cost is split between the university and students, but a lot of faculties have dedicated counselors just for that faculty, and that faculty pays the half of the fee. So for instance, in engineering, half of the fee comes from the university and half comes from the engineering faculty. So this is one of the avenues we can investigate to reduce the cost on students.
There will now be 3 minutes of open debate.
So I think what really differentiates our approach to mental health is that we want counseling services to be the last thing people have to go to. It has to be the last line of defense. We need to focus on issues that the university is already working on, issues like sleep, relationship habits, drinking habits, food habits. These are the issues that the existing Fed services like CRT, for example, the Women's Center and the Glow Center are already working with the university to advocate on these issues. I feel like as a VP internal, I would be working with these services, focusing on those issues, and while the more high-level lobbying of counseling services will be taken up by our presidential candidate.
Yeah, so I have one question. Like, how, would it be an extra burden on our students?
Sorry, who is this addressed to? To me?
It's for you.
About what? About counseling?
About the counseling services. Like, if it is a 50% burden on our students, that would increase the extra burden on them, on fees.
Okay. As I just mentioned, we want to investigate the faculty to cover the portion of the student fee, so it's not as much of a burden on students. And I just want to address Maz's points. So you talk about sleep and relationship habits, but my issue is that there's no one on campus who can actually support students with these habits. Like you talk about CRT. CRT isn't actually going to go and tell students to sleep more. That's the counselors who are going to do that. And even with resources like the SSO and counseling, the point is that they're very overbooked. And these are the first lines of defense. Counseling shouldn't be seen as a last line of defense because that creates a big stigma and it doesn't help students go seek support when they need it most. So counseling should be the first line of defense so that students can actually get the support that they need and figure out how to work with sleep and relationship habits, both of which are topics that are addressed by counseling.
So in response to that, what I mean is that we need to focus on overall wellness of students' health and their overall lifestyles. And we have staff in Feds, the student programs officer who works with counseling services on issues like these. And by addressing a lot of these issues like sleep, wellness, food habits, I feel that we would be contributing towards that.
And I get 30 seconds. Again, I just want to point out one more time that it's really, it's great to address issues like sleep and relationship habits, but none of the other teams have come up with specific platform points on how they're going to address it other than just collaboration. I thought I got 30 seconds. Oh, okay, all right. Oh, okay. Okay,
There's
thank you.
4 seconds left in the open debate. Angela, you now have 30 seconds for your closing comments.
Okay, so again, I want to address one more time that counseling is the one that directly interacts with students to provide these types of resources. Counseling does run a lot of workshops to address issues of sleep and relationships. So currently they do a do, think, act workshop where they teach students how to deal with all of these issues in a 1 hour period. But the point is that these workshops are still overbooked, so we need to focus on counseling services first.
All right, this next question is for Moz. Moz, in your platform, you identify that you want to promote Fed services on satellite campuses. However, this does not solve the problem that students at satellite campuses would still need to travel to main campus to use these services. Given that service availability is different across satellite campuses, do you believe that students at satellite campuses should pay lower fees than their main campus counterparts? The order for this question will be Anjali, Salim, and then Moz.
With satellite campuses, I think the important thing to realize is that their needs are very unique from issues of main campus. So it's great that we provide a lot of services for main campus, but satellite campuses may not need these services. So we actually met with WASA, which is the Architecture Association, and they mentioned that the services they'd like to see more are having more FEDS buses and having more availability to travel to main campus. So we want to focus on that.
So yesterday we have met a Vasa, and they were concerned on the services the Waterloo campus have and they don't have it. So we are considering to decrease their federation fees in order to help them in the future. Thank you.
So it all comes down to a value question. Can we improve the value for what the students are paying in terms of fees? Can we offer more services to them? Can we offer more event programming, like from Waterloo Team Feds? We do a lot of food giveaways and whatnot. Can we do that at satellite campuses? We should try to optimize the value, and if after having all these programming done for them, if they still feel that they're not getting enough value for what they're paying, we should consider decreasing the fees that they pay to Feds.
There will now be 3 minutes for open debate, and just so you know, I will inform you when the open debate is over.
Maz, I was wondering if you could be a little bit more specific on what types of services and events you want to offer to satellite campuses?
Sure. So one of the things that we were at pharmacy yesterday, and by the way, the pharmacy students, they were really disappointed that Team Spark was the only team that made an effort to come to their campus repeatedly. And they kept talking about how at the dispensary, their hours of their only food outlet there, it closes very early before classes end. So just looking at those hours, and then we have our event team, the Waterloo Team Feds, which offers events on main campus. They expressed interest that they would like to see them on these satellite campuses too. So those are just examples.
So my question is when do you need when there should be a bus service specifically for satellite campuses? Yeah, 2 months.
Okay, the Fed bus service was brought up by the architecture students and the pharmacy students. Now we realize that sometimes it may not be feasible, so I think a Fed bus service should only be used when we see enough demand and enough value.
So I just wanted to point out that part of transportation includes FEDS buses, but it also includes like the big yellow school buses you guys might see around campus. Those are actually for architecture students that are coming from Cambridge down to Waterloo. And these are some of the things we want to support because we got direct feedback from WASA saying that they want to see more interaction with the campus. So that's one of the services we want to provide. We also think other services we can provide is helping WASA set up a C&D because when we met with them, this was something they were really keen on doing. And as a result, I think there is a lot of benefit to the services that Feds can provide for satellite campuses. We just need to make sure that we identify them and don't, again, put blanket services over our satellite campuses because they all have unique needs.
How much more time do we have?
You have 15 seconds.
Okay, so as we all know, the issue is that there's a huge disconnect. Pharmacy students said that 90% of them knew Feds, what Feds does for them when they were on main campus. Only 2% said that they know what Feds does for them at pharmacy. So I think that's a big issue.
All right, Maz, you will now have 30 seconds in closing comments.
So I think it all comes down to the fact that there is a large disconnect between, as I said, between satellite campuses and main campus. Satellite campuses pay the Feds fee, yet most of them feel that they don't get the value of what the fee they pay. So we need to increase programming. We need to let them know exactly what Feds does for them. We need to bring Feds to them. We need to have execs regularly visiting them and making sure that they understand that Feds is here for them, not just for main campus students.
All right, this next question is for Salim. Salim, you wish to create formal evaluation criteria so that clubs can have increased funding from feds. Currently, clubs who feel they need financial support have access to multiple funds. If your procedure were adopted, what would you do if more clubs than expected met the criteria for increased initial funding and you were over budget? The order for this question will be Maz, Anjali, and then Salim.
I think what clubs really need at this point is they need more support and more resources that are not necessarily involving money. I had a good chat with Jimmy the other day, and she said how there's 200 clubs, and she's the only one that's dealing with clubs right now. So we need what I propose is a volunteer clubs support team that helps clubs with all these little things that come up, not necessarily money.
So funding is a really big issue for clubs, and Team Nova has a couple of specific solutions to this. First, we're restructuring the way that businesses work with feds in the first place. So we're looking at ways that fees can be directed away from events and towards more student services. And second, we also really want to promote training because we think that when clubs run into the issue of funding, they can get sponsorships, and we want to provide training for that.
To help these clubs, feds should create a formal evaluation criteria on basis of which budget increase can be improved in order to prevent biases from occurring. While developing the criteria we will engage club heads and make decision making process and transparent as can be. Thank you.
There will now be 3 minutes for open debate.
So just a question to Anjali. You did mention that we would like to see more training for clubs. Right now, the club's manager runs multiple training sessions for clubs throughout the term. How would your training program be different than that?
Part of our platform is to expand training, so we want to look at things like scheduling and event management, but we also want to look at issues like sponsorships. And I have had chats with club execs that say, oh yeah, that would be really useful because we don't know how to fundraise money. So that would be one of the ways we can deal with that.
Do you think just one-off trainings would really help clubs throughout the term? For example, my platform says that we need a support team that is there for clubs throughout the term. How do you think that having that one-off training would really help them throughout the term?
Well, training is the first step to finding a resource, and I actually have a question about your club support team since you mentioned it. You mentioned that one of the things you want the club support team to do is attend regular meetings, but as you mentioned, there's 200 clubs on campuses. How do you expect them to attend all these meetings, and how big of a support team are you willing to create?
So those are two questions. The first question is how do we expect the club support team to attend all 200 clubs meetings? Obviously, they're not going to attend all the 200 clubs meetings. Whenever there's an important meeting, like a general body meeting, they would attend that to facilitate with anything. And the second question, what was that? How big the club support team is going to be? I plan to keep it around 7 to 10 volunteers.
I also have one more question for Maz. Clubs don't have enough money, but in your platform you said you wanted to give societies money, and societies usually have their own fees. So I'm wondering why you would take money from feds and give it to societies instead of supporting clubs.
So just to clarify, I never said I would be giving societies money. I said that we would be giving them a float for which they could use funds in the short term until they get their funding.
Can I? In your platform, it says sponsor major society events with the society fund.
Do I have time to respond to that?
we didn't try to make a promises which aren't possible. We just want to help clubs for extra budget, like the clubs which are like, for example, UW Poker Club, which is nationwide, one of the promising club. We need an extra budget for them to in order to increase their events. Thank you.
Salim, you also now have 30 seconds for your closing comments.
Sorry, I thought that was my closing statement.
Pardon me?
Sorry, I thought that was my closing statement.
No, we were still in open debate. If you have anything else you'd like to add, you have 30 seconds.
No, I'm good.
All right. This next question is for Moz. Moz, at the imprint debate, you identified prayer space as one of the first issues you would bring to the attention of the university. A main concern is that centralized prayer space does not give students adequate time to pray between classes once travel time is taken into account. Does a holistic solution exist, and if so, is it even feasible? The order for this question will be Salim, Anjali, and then Moz.
I think we really need a prayer room, and it's in our president platform. And I think we should prioritize how important the prayer rooms are compared to the other facilities which we are needing in the future. Thank you.
So I think the issue of prayer space covers a deeper issue, which is just the lack of student space on campus, and Team Nova is very committed to addressing these needs. So we want to really work for more prayer space as well as more multi-purpose space. And we can look at this by things like renovating the SLC and investigating the RIM buildings that the university just got to see if those are avenues for student space, as well as trying to create a new student building. So we're very committed to this.
So yes, I did say that prayer space is one of the important issues, and having a space that is central to most students would be important. Now, we need to look at prayer spaces in DC, for example, because that got taken away because of renovations. We need to look at prayer spaces that are near the engineering buildings, because that's where most of the population who is interested in, as far as I'm aware, wants to pray.
There will now be 3 minutes for open debate.
So one of the things that Anjali mentioned was looking at SLC renovations and the new RIM buildings. However, most of the students that want to pray most of them find SLC inconvenient because they have to come all the way from CPH, for example, and the RIM buildings are, again, not very close. One of my plans is to look at advocating, and I've already talked with the university administration about this, is to have a prayer space in DC.
So we want to look at restructuring space in general. So when we look at SLC and RIM buildings, if we can offer that as multi-purpose space for clubs, this means this will free up space in other areas that clubs can use for prayer. On this note, I actually have a question for Maz. So at the imprint debate, you mentioned that prayer space was the first priority that you had when addressing issues to university administration. And I'm wondering why prayer is a more important priority than something like mental health, because mental health, 1 in 5 students suffer from it, whereas prayer, maybe like a few hundred students on campus find that very important, and 1 in 5 from 30,000 is about 6,000 students.
Thanks for the statistics. So I said that prayer space would be the thing that we would advocate to the university administration for, because mental health, while it is a huge part of our platform, it is a huge part of our presidential platform too, and they will be doing most of the lobbying. I will be focusing, with regards to mental health, on improving our internal services and how we can address mental health.
I just want to focus again on the issue of space and how we need to look at more space in general rather than just looking for certain areas, because the problem is that in 5 years, the university has an enrollment plan for more students. So more space is what's required, not just space in certain areas.
Do any more candidates have anything to add? All right, Maz, you'll have 30 seconds for your closing comments.
So I've been closely involved with the MSA and other religious groups that really need prayer space. And we have 2 prayer spaces in this building, the MFPR and the prayer space downstairs. And most students feel that it's inadequate. for their needs. We need to focus on space that is accessible, that is central to all students, and that includes space. I feel and I've already advocated for this to the university, and they're open to having that conversation regarding paired space in DC and in the engineering buildings, and that is what I intend to do.
All right, this next question is for Salim. Salim, in your platform, you discuss converting unused space into a club's library and additional storage space, as well as creating a de-stressing space. The SLC has many unoccupied spaces to ensure that there is adequate space for student groups and students to book spaces for events and studying. Why is a de-stressing space a reasonable proposal when it is essentially what we already provide, except it will take away other bookable spaces? The order for this question will be Anjali, Maz, and then Salim.
So part of what we want to do for clubs is to introduce additional things like storage space. In terms of unused space, I'm not actually seeing where there's a lot of like unused rooms available. The SLC is very packed. However, what we want to do is focus in dead space, which is space that like students travel through, for instance, the basement near all the businesses, where we can introduce additional storage, things like lockers.
So I feel that there's a big value for clubs in having a bookable club's office where they can hold their exec meetings without having to worry about other students booking it off. So for example, the club's lounge that's in the corner there, we can have that be a bookable club's office, and I feel that that would be a much greater value to students than the alternatives.
According to the recent survey from a national arts college, uh, de-stressing is one of the main factor amongst the students in their study, in their education. Uh, we are planning to have club storage and club's library after the completion of the space audit. Thank you.
There will now be 3 minutes for open debate.
So club's library is something that keeps coming up year after year, as I'm sure you all are aware. And also club storage. This building is just really in high demand. And looking at existing spaces in this building is obviously a very good idea, but I feel like a club's library at this point, we have to really look into the results of the space audit before we commit to it.
So I have a question for Salim. Salim, you said that most of your mental health platform focuses around a de-stressing room and doesn't really focus on support services. Can you explain how a de-stressing room can tackle issues like depression, anxiety?
Basically, mental health and mental illness are two different topics. So we really de-stressing room will help the students in managing their stress. Like for example, we have a meditation room in our priority. By meditation room, students can sit in the meditation room, and like they can have a music and comfortable chairs, and this will help them to manage their stress. And we are also considering the regular puppy room, which was there in the UBC, and it was very successful.
Um, Salim, if mental health and mental illness are two different topics, then do you think mental illness should be a priority for this university? And if so, how do you plan to fix it?
I think mental illness is something which is not under the federation. It's basically under.
I just want to speak to the issue of a club's library. So a club's library is a really great idea, and we know we have a lot of support from clubs who want to do it. Team Nova's platform for this is to use a lot of the study rooms upstairs and have locked bookshelves with staff from student volunteers, and we think this is a realistic plan to have a club's library.
Regarding the locked bookshelf room, wouldn't that be taking away from bookable spaces that clubs and other services could book out?
No, because we're going to have these in study spaces that can't be booked out. Like there are some spaces that are just used for studying, and we want to have locked bookshelves in those spaces.
Are there any other comments?
How much more time do we have?
There's 15 seconds left in open debate.
I think the question was about de-stressing space and about space in SLC in general. And now I'm running out of time, but I think a club's office would really be a big solution for clubs in terms of space in SLC.
Time. Salim, you will now have 30 seconds in closing comments.
We are trying to make a promises which are possible. So I think de-stressing room is something that federation can have a facility for students, which will helpful for them to in order to de-stress them and help them in their education, and which will be more helpful than in normal conditions. Thank you.
The final question to the internal candidates will be directed towards Anjali. Anjali, in your platform, you wish to review the success of the Society's accountant. The Society's accountant assists societies with ensuring that they are following proper financial practices and keeping financial records, as Feds is responsible for societies legally and financially. The cost of auditing a society's finance can be upwards of $12,000. Who should pay this cost? The central Feds funds collected from all students, or the individual student societies through their own society's fees? The order for this question will be Salim, Maz, and then Anjali.
I will agree with this platform point of Anjali, and we really want to see this when I will be elected as a VP internal in my office. Thank you.
I think that's a really good question, which comes up every time we want to talk about societies want to sort of separate and form their own society. There is that cost of between $12,000 to $14,000 for auditing financial statements, and that is a question we need to ask the students that are within that society if they want to bear that cost when it comes to your society being independent. If they are willing to do that, then I think the students should be bearing that cost.
So part of the mandate of Feds is to help support student societies, and currently all student societies fall under Feds. So as a result, I think it's reasonable for Feds to pay the fee of the audit. In addition, I think this will also help support our plan of collaboration between student societies, because part of what we want to do is to help empower societies and make sure they're strong, and we're not going to do that if we pull away money from them.
There will now be 3 minutes for open debate.
When you say Feds should be paying for these societies, isn't that essentially students paying the fee?
Yeah, it is students paying the fee, but part of Feds is to help support societies. So Feds should be helping to support the society? Sorry, I don't really understand your question.
I was just clarifying because my point was that societies, when they want to separate and they want to have these financial statements audited, and the cost for them is so large, then it becomes a question of whether the students really would like to see that separation happen, and if they would like to pay that cost. And if they do, then I think students should be paying it. I just wanted to see if you feel that Feds and students was a distinction or not.
Right, so if a society would separate, then the audit is no longer under Feds, so Feds wouldn't be paying that fee because they're not under Feds. But for all the other societies that are under Feds, of course Feds should be taking care of them. That's what Feds is for. They're supposed to empower the students. Okay.
Are there any other comments?
Again, and I would just like to speak a little bit more about collaboration between societies, which is an issue that I feel really strongly about. I think student societies are extremely important to the university because they can tailor to their faculties more effectively than Feds can. And as a result, we need to be working to strengthen these relations, make sure we're supporting societies to the best extent that we are able, treating each society uniquely and not covering a blanket statement over them or a blanket sort of like agreement, and making sure we have strong relationships with societies.
Society collaboration is very important, and it is something that I have been doing as an academic affairs commissioner. Even though it wasn't really a part of my job, I still made the effort of getting all the society VP academics together and talking about issues where Feds can help them without stepping on their toes whilst maintaining their autonomy. So I think that is something that we should continue to do, and Feds should support students within the societies better, because societies are the best engaged with their students.
Are there any other comments? Anjali, you'll now have 30 seconds for your closing comments.
And I think one of the things that is important to remember is that when we're collaborating with societies, we need to have prior experience of how a society works. And currently, I'm the most experienced candidate for this, and we also have other candidates on my team, including Liz McFall, who's worked extensively with MATSOC. I've worked extensively with NSOC. And as a result, we understand the unique needs of societies, so we can best address these issues. Thank you.
Unfortunately, there is no time for audience questions for the VP internal candidates, so thank you for all of your answers. I would now invite all of the Vice President Education candidates to come up to the front. The debate will begin in only a few minutes.